motion, slicing through like waves on the ocean. Tape to tape with perfect aim, setting up a scoring claim. The coach's voice booms from the bench, calling plays an expert cinch. Pucks on net, let 'em rip, we'll bring.
Welcome to episode 34 of Cross Ice Pass. I'm your coach, Steve Mosier. I got a new hat made by a good friend of mine, Gina, out in California. She's a beast at as a vendor and really helps things I do for work as well as things I do outside of work. So thank you so much, Gina and Lithuania. Here we go. Training camps are live. They're happening. Everyone's in training camps. Everyone's trying to figure out what their team needs. It's pretty awesome to keep an eye on media availability and practices leading into the preseason games. This is where YouTube and a lot of the content you can find on YouTube comes into major play. Sorry, I might have a bit of a hoarse voice, and that's mostly because I woke up at 5 this morning to coach. So, take it easy on me. This week, happy, surprising, not surprising, and pretty unusual. There's some good ones here. Congrats to Nick Foligno, Victor Hedman, and Radko Gudas on getting the C for their team. As we know, Steven Stamkos is going to Nashville, so of course the next person in line to get that C was Victor Hedman. Not surprising at all. Congratulations to you guys. Nick Foligno, if you haven't seen the video, look it up. He had his kids brought his beautiful Chicago Blackhawks jersey with a C on it to him. So, congrats, Nick Foligno. I got nothing against you. You're the best. You're such a good player, good fighter, good strong player, good leader. So I think that makes sense for the Chicago Blackhawks and the youth growth that they're having based on Connor Bedard and many others. As a Wings fan, I'm happy that Lucas Raymond, everyone calls him Razor, and Mo Sider signed. Hallelujah. I've been very, very nervous all season. Not like I knew that they would, I'm thinking they're going to go somewhere else or something, but it was kind of tough, and I was just waiting. And the fact that's going on, Mo Sider's not really in training camp. He will be in the preseason games this upcoming week. And now for the Red Wings, we got 4 NHL goalies we have to play with in Cam Talbot, Alex Lyon, Billy Husso, and Jack Campbell. So we'll see how that goes. And then on top of that, we have one of the best prospects of all goaltenders, which is Sebastian Cossa. And then on top of that, we have another goaltender that's a Michigan State goaltender. So we're, as much as people like to think the Red Wings are out without goaltenders, take it easy. We're kind of overloaded in a way. Adam Johnson, who lost his life last year when he took a skate to the neck, is being honored by his team in the Nottingham Panthers. They're going to retire his number 47 on December 14th. I think this is a great move for that organization. This year, we just started USA Hockey. I just started yelling at kids about making sure that their net guards are in place because they should be at all times, just like Canada did. So we're going to just follow that through, make sure people are safe, make sure people are playing and using a comfortable shirt with a comfortable neck guard, so the kids don't think about not having it on. So much love all over the hockey world, wearing helmet stickers to support the memory of the Goudreau brothers. I want to get my hands on a pair on some, because I'd love to put it not only on my helmets, but the kids I play or I coach. I think it would be really beneficial, really helpful, if these organizations that the Goudreau brothers' wives are putting together, to help them deal with, especially, Matthew Goudreau and his upcoming little one that that his wife's expecting. Surprising, the Canucks. Dakota Johnson was diagnosed with testicular cancer. So he will miss training camp due to surgery to remove a tumor. Lots of love for him and his family. It'll be great to see him back on the ice soon. I know the Canucks were really pumped that he was going to come and be a Vancouver Canuck. But this is unfortunate, and it's more about him and his family and his well-being than it is his hockey career at this moment. So we'll see him soon. I'm pretty excited to see him soon, especially considering his battle. TG Oshie is going on the IR for the season. And this is another sad moment to see. I mean, Detroit is a similar situation with Henrik Zetterberg, which led to his retirement. TJ Oshie has some pretty terrible back problems. This happens in the NHL. You get hit, it just kind of continues. You can't just like take it away. So, a lot of love for TJ Oshie, one of our really really well-known American players. Is doing a lot of really good things in his hometown, and you can't say anything tough or hard about TJ Oshie. He doesn't deserve this, and we really hope to see him back on the ice soon. Because a lot of players have had their careers shut down, shut short because of back injuries. So hopefully the Washington Capitals will see him back soon. Fingers crossed. Not surprising, Yager has announced his retirement. Maybe. So this retirement came from his manager, that said, yeah, Yaromir's ready to go, ready to hang him up, and that's it. But I don't know. Also, looking forward to watching him this season, and excited to see what he'll bring for us fans. Definitely try to find a way to get into Clogno and see his team and see him play, because it might be the end of that player. So unusual. This one's kind of wild. There's a few unusual ones this for this episode. Sorry. Oreos and milk. It's official. Even when they're drought from winning a cup, that the Leafs are crazy. It's weird, and it's gotten worse. I don't know. I mean, it's bad enough they have the milk logo. I can't say too much because the Red Wings have a trash company logo on their jersey. But Oreos and milk, that's tough. You might as well just say, like, I don't know, tortillas and taco ingredients, or I don't know, Ortega or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's a little weird. Capitals brought back their cool black jerseys on Ovi's birthday, and we've probably all seen it. But what the heck is with his captaincy in the middle of his jersey? Are you kidding me? I mean, there's not a place you could put this thing. I blame designers for this. I am a graphic designer. This is what I've done for my career. But are you kidding me? Let's make the logo like maybe an inch smaller so that the C could go over the heart like it's supposed to. Instead of putting it right next to a Caesars logo, right underneath his neck. It's so weird, very weird. Another unusual piece is Fanatics. There are $450 jerseys available today. But as usual, this is my biggest problem with this cost. No name, no number. But the basis of an empty jersey is $450. This is ridiculous. I'm sorry. They have released their next level down for $229, which I think it's funny. It's only It is $11 cheaper than the Adidas jersey, but I don't know. If they start putting names and numbers on these things, they're going to be like $500, and I think that's ridiculous. I think that's not helpful for your middle class fans to be able to afford these things and still pay for their mortgage. Absolutely ridiculous. I'm happy they're being made in Canada by some wonderful craftsmen, crafts ladies, but come on. I support Robin Lehner and the things that have happened in his career, but for him to not show up for a medical examination, even though he's making $4.5 million a season, I am all for the Vegas Golden Knights and them wondering how they can get that money back. If he's not going to show up, if he's not going to be part of the community, if he's just going to sit at home and collect his checks, time to let him go. Sorry. I think that the union should jump right into this, which they are with the Golden Knights, but it's absolutely ridiculous. I hate giving a player so much leeway. I know he had some issues with alcoholism. I know he had some issues with injuries in the past. I know that all that's happening, and I gotta give him a lot of credit for that. But for him to not show up to make $4.5 million, are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. Because I know he has the money, because he's been making $4.5 million for the last 4 years. Now he's got a year left on his contract with the Golden Knights. Golden Knights have been swallowing his contract for 4 years because they thought he would be a crucial part of the future. They won a cup, and then here we are. It's ridiculous. Robin Lehner, get your butt off your couch, go there, get a medical examination, make sure you get paid, because when you signed that contract, you signed it because you deserved it. And I don't think you deserve it if you're not going to show up. There's not much being asked of you. So, other than a medical examination, you are not doing things for the community. People are not seeing you. The Vegas Golden Knights fanship are not seeing you. So, what do you got to do? You got to do one thing, buddy. So, absolutely ridiculous. I'm so I think it's very classless of him to do this. I think it's ridiculous. One thing I want to go back for on the happy note before I get into my coach's corner. is that I want to say something a little serious about Sidney Crosby. Captain Canada, the golden goal, all of that. 8.7 million, considering the stats that he put down last year. Sidney Crosby deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Sidney Crosby deserves to be considered one of the best captains ever in the game. Sidney Crosby considers to be, one of the best Penguins ever. Even though it's pretty hard to deal with. I think the greatest hockey player ever, which is Mario Lemieux in front of him. But I have to say, bravo to Sidney Crosby. Bravo to taking a pay cut. Bravo to Sidney Crosby. Trying to hope that his team will take a chance at making a playoff run. Even though the Red Wings are going to be in the way. Sorry. So, bravo to Sidney Crosby. When kids want to look up to someone that's making the right decisions, professionally, on the ice, and everything else, he's the one. So, and for many years, I gave Cindy a big hard time because he tried to be a bit of a agitator, but once he found his game in the NHL, I think we all realize how great of a player he is. So, congratulations, Sidney Crosby. Coach's Corner with Steve, Coach Steve. I'm hoping you players are figuring out ways to find a comfortable net guard. I understand it's a pain. It's a new thing, having to deal with a bit of a thing around your neck. Because I know in certain places, especially in the U.S., you haven't had to deal with that. So I understand it's a pain. Choices are out there. There's a lot of really comfortable things you can get parents. You can get them for Christmas for your kids that are playing. Whether it's Sherwood, Bauer, CCM, EOS, Warrior, Duster, Titan, and my favorite, A-Cane, because they make just everything's really sustainable and really dialed up for the price. Warrior, War Road stuff is so expensive. I know they're an American company. I know it's TJ Oshie's company, but they're twice the price, and I don't think everyone can afford that. I think that should be a mindful game of finding something for your child to be protected. Today's interview. Here we are. I had a great interview with this guy in the summer. Morris Lukowich. He's played in the WHA and the NHL. Was blessed to play with his hero in Gordie Howe. Otherwise, he would have been a Pittsburgh Penguin. He decided that he wanted to go to Houston, because he was drafted by the WHA and the NHL, because he wanted to go be able to play with his hero. Totally understand that. But he also played with Bobby Hull in Winnipeg, Dale Hawerchuk in Winnipeg, Marcel Dion in LA, Luc Robitaille in LA, and the list goes on. He played with so many great players, but he was also a top 2-line guy. He wasn't sitting in the 4th line or something like that. He would definitely produced. He passed. He got a lot of assists, a lot of goals, and I was super happy to talk to him. He was a heck of a player, and he turned into a pretty awesome. He turned that into a very awesome college coaching career after his playing days. So, on that note, let's move on to Luc. Well, we've got a speedy left wing, born in Spears, Saskatchewan, brother of Ed Lukowich, Canadian curling legend, star player for the Medicine Hat Tigers. In 1976, he was drafted into the NHL 47th overall by the Pittsburgh Penguins. while also being drafted in the WHA 22nd overall by the Houston Aeros. Chose to start in Houston to play with his hero Gordie Howe. Won the last WHA Avco Cup with the Winnipeg Jets in 78-79. That year was his strongest statistically, with Bobby Hull injured most of the season. When the Jets moved to the NHL, he was one of the few players able to stay with the team. Spent 6 years with Winnipeg, where he was a captain in 80-81 and was a two-time All-Star. Had 2 shorter seasons with the Bruins. Finished his NHL career with the Kings, where he became a mentor to Luc Robitaille and Jimmy Carson. Welcome to Cross Ice Pass, Morris Lukowich, aka Luke. We gotta make sure we call you Luke, since that's what they cheer you at the football stadium.
Thank you, Steve. It's tremendous to be here. And I've got to make a small correction.
Yep.
I was not a mentor to Luc Robitaille. I was the mentor to Jimmy Carson. When those two guys came, and we actually had 3 incredible rookies that year in the 1986-87 season. We also had Steve Deshane on defense, who came out of nowhere, Labrador, and ended up being, I think, played 19 years, 17 years in the NHL. It was incredible. And he walked on as, I believe, a free agent. But Pat Quinn came to me that year and said, Morris, I'd like if you could mentor Jimmy Carson. He knows nothing about defensive hockey, but he has incredible offensive skills. And he said, would you work with him? And I said, absolutely. And he said, I'm going to have Marcel mentor Robitaille. So Marcel mentored Robitaille. Okay. But also just a quick thing. During that year, Luc Robitaille, one time, I missed a breakaway one night. I missed a pass. And that next morning, I was out on the rink shooting some pucks. I was the first guy on the ice. And Robitaille came out and he said, hey, can I show you something that would have helped you catch that pass and score that goal last night? And I thought to myself, wow, here's this cocky rookie. This is my 11th year. And luckily I said, yeah. And he showed me what I did wrong and what I had coached wrong for like over 20 years. And it had to do with how to catch a pass correctly. And then I've taught that for years and years since. And when many coaches, when they see what it is, their jaws hit the ground because something got into our system and it's been coached incorrectly for about 50 years. So when Robitaille showed me that, so actually Robitaille mentored me. I didn't mentor him.
That's great. No, I mean, I love that, that flip in things. And, and thank you for Jimmy Carson played for the Red Wings. So I got to see him play often when I was a kid. Also, I believe because of the trade with Gretzky, he won a cup with the Oilers. So I'm sure you were integral in his development for sure.
You know what? I think we might have to check that. I think he did not win a cup with the Oilers.
He might have been moved all over the place because I think
he had moved. I think he had moved. I think he did not like his time in Edmonton.
Yeah.
But anyways, we
not everyone says that, but it's not an uncommon thing to hear. Well, Luke, the one thing I always start with, is I'm always even the shirt I wear, is my first question I always love to ask is, what is your fondest hockey memory? And I like to kind of throw it in there right away, just because it could be something recent, it could be something older. I really love to kind of throw a little wrench in there a little bit just to see what you think of.
Wow, there are so many. Like I call them now moments. Something happens, and it's almost and I go, wow. Like I call them now wow moments. I go, wow, like I've made it to the big time. So I'll give you a couple of examples.
You can go for it.
And then I'll nail it down to one.
Okay.
Was that I was sitting on the bench beside Gordie Howe when I played with the Houston Aeros in 76, 77. And I had an option of going to either the Pittsburgh Penguins or the NHL or the Houston Aeros or the WHA. And it ended up where I had to push to shove. I came to shove. I ended up closing my eyes and it was like a voice said, go play with Gordie Howe. And I remember I got back on the phone with Ren Blair, the general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins, who wanted me to come there. And I said, Mr. Blair, I'd like to thank you for your contract offer. Yet, you know what? I just really want to play with Gordie Howe. And he took it well. He said, well, you little shit. You will never play a day in the NHL, and hung up. But anyways, so I was sitting beside Gordie Howe. And Gordie Howe, like when guys come off the ice, they'll sometimes grab a towel and wipe their face. And or they will, like I used to take my glove off and I wipe my brow like that. Otherwise, the sweat just pours down in the ice. Gordie did something different that no other player did. So I was sitting beside him, and all of a sudden Gordie was sitting there, and all of a sudden, so pretend I'm Gordie. All of a sudden, he just looks over and wipes his brow on my shoulder. He was the only player to ever do that. And he just looked sideways and he wiped his brow. And I remember I looked at my shoulder and I thought, wow, I have made it to the big time.
Wow,
then,
that's like a big like I've heard so many stories about Gordie Howe. I'm like excited. That's the first time I've ever heard that.
yeah, you know what? It was, I told it when they were honoring him in Saskatoon. And I spoke at a luncheon, and Mark and Marty were there along with Murray Howe, and it ended up I told that story, and I could see Mark and Marty, I could see the tears well up in their eyes, because their dad was the only man that ever did that. And Murray came over after the lunch, and he said, Morris, I'd like to thank you for telling that story. He says, I forgot that my dad did that. He said it was just a beautiful, beautiful story. So, and it was, and I told the trainers not to wash that jersey ever again, but they did, of course. It's just a rookie.
Right.
And, but then another moment that was pretty cool was with Bobby Hull. And it was our first year NHL. And we were out for some beers after a game. We were with Lars Erik Schoberg, Willie Lindstrom. And as we came back, and I'd heard about this, but it was something to experience it. So the four of us were walking down the hallway in our hotel, and we were talking, and all of a sudden I went to say something to Bobby, and he wasn't there. And I turned around and I looked, and here he was back down the hallway on his hands and knees. And I thought, oh, wow, Bobby must be getting sick. He must be throwing up. And so we went back, and here was Bobby on his hands and knees. But he wasn't throwing up. He was digging through somebody's room service. And he says, Lukey, look at this. He says, there's a half-eaten steak and some French fries. Which do you want? And I thought for a second, I said, well, I'll have the half-eaten steak. And so he gave me the steak. I ate it from the uneaten side in, and he had the French fries. And here, Bobby and I, it was about 2:00 in the morning. We had lunch in the hotel hallway. And I thought to myself, wow, like I've made it to the big time. Who else gets to do this?
Yeah.
But if we could actually kind of bring it all down to one moment, we won a WHA championship in Winnipeg, which was incredible to win a championship. And yet I would say my very first goal was a goal in Birmingham, and I scored on John Garrett on the 5-hole. And Gordie got the puck behind the net, and he flipped it over to Larry London. Larry passed it out in front, and I got it, and I fired it 5-hole. And then Gordie came over, and I remember he kind of gave me a punch to the head, and he said, way to go, rookie. And that was a very cool moment.
Yeah, I can only imagine someone you looked up to so much. I know that Gordie Howe over the years, I mean, of course you hear Bobby Orr, Gordie Howe, Bobby Hull, but I know Gordie Howe was, for some reason, Gordie Howe had a different kind of fans, and everyone, because it seems like everyone, if you had a hockey stick and skates, you probably loved Gordie Howe. And it was really those are really lovely. Even the Bobby Hull steak one is good as well. Those are pretty
Gordie
great.
Gordie was the only man that ever, he played through 5 decades of hockey, the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and then also skated one time for to make it 6 decades. Yeah, he was pretty incredible.
I
And
was
he
at I
was
was at that Detroit Vipers game. I
Oh,
was
really?
young, but I was there. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Incredible. Well, and Gordie
Um,
was and he was the dirtiest guy too. So, but we could spend the whole show just
yeah,
talking about him.
yeah, yeah. One question I kind of want to start with is, when you were a kid playing in Saskatchewan, it seems at the time you weren't going to be over a 6 foot player, but being your size and being known for your speed and stick handling, um, how did you avoid those big guys, those big farm boys, in Saskatchewan? Um, was it just pure speed and getting away from them?
Well, you know what? There was a lot of times I didn't get away from him. Like, but what happened was I learned very quickly that if I did strength training and if I got my body in super, super incredible shape, then I could take most of those hits. But I would say I also experienced all sorts of concussions. Um, Often, though, and it's a piece of my maximum goal scoring program, I've taught a path of least resistance to the goal. And what I figured out after a while is I had a strong way of beating the defenseman, and the defenseman had a weak side. And that the more and more I would actually match my strength against his weakness, the more I could actually beat him with speed. I couldn't stick handle around anything. Like I was not a Hawerchuk. I attempted to stick handle by defenseman a couple of times, and every time I ended up looking at the rafters. So I learned pretty quick that my way to beat a defenseman was with speed, and then also I learned pretty quickly how to roll off a hit when they were coming, just right at the moment when the contact is made. If we could spin, a lot of times you could avoid uh, the full brunt of the hit. Although I just recently told somebody a story about in Washington. Who was the Scott Stevens? The puck goes into the corner. I go after Scott, comes in, kaboom. We run into each other. I go flying, but the puck just pops up the boards towards the hash marks. And so I go after it, and who's coming but a guy by the name of Kelly, Mad Dog Kelly. Oh my gosh. He's like a clone of Stevens. Kaboom. We run into each other at the hash mark. Now the puck goes back into the corner. So I turn and I go after it, and who's coming again like a train? Goddamn Scott Stevens. Kaboom. There's like these 3 crushing hits.
Wow.
Then luckily the puck went away,
Yeah.
which was I was thankful for.
Yeah, you don't want
But
a guy
so
named Mad
yeah,
Dog coming after you, for sure.
and you know what? At the time too, I don't know what people are going to think about this yet. It was a dirtier time of hockey, and I was okay to sometimes just get my stick up and cross check guys across the face, and then often that would help because sometimes guys were just coming. The last ditch thing I could do is protect myself.
Well, I mean, through your career, you had lots of, goals and assists, but you definitely had some penalty minutes in there. So I don't think you were a pushover at all. Even with Mad Dog coming at you, guys like Mad Dog and Scott Stevens.
No, that's actually one thing. I ended up with about 600 points, but 900 minutes in penalties. So there was one thing. I think Don Cherry said it isn't the size of the dog in the fight; it's the size of the fight in the dog. And I had a certain amount of fight in me, and I knew. I mean, I was sometimes out of my weight category with some guys, but there was a lot of fights. Too many.
Well, and I mean, as a rookie going to Houston, not only with the House Suns, but Big Gordy as kind of a not a necessarily protector, but he's definitely probably a nice big guy to have there with you. Um, but I'm curious. I'm always curious, just because when the WHA was around and there were these Southern teams, and I know that having Southern teams was kind of unique. Even myself as a kid in the '90s, it was kind of, having Southern teams in Florida and things were always wild. But what was that jump from Saskatchewan to Houston, Texas?
Yeah, it was really quite something. And then to play in places like Birmingham, which had the Birmingham Bulls. Also to end up in Phoenix at that time. There's Phoenix Roadrunners, San Diego Mariners. So there were a lot of Southern teams, and but you know what? Houston was a very good hockey crowd, and the rink was we had a really good season's ticket base, and it was an exciting place to play. And it was also one of the very first arenas that had instant replay screens. The very first two rinks in the NHL were the Summit in Houston. They had a big screen at each end of the rink, and then also the Washington Capitals arena were the very first two arenas that had instant replay. And so that was something, because down people started to see the tricks that Gordie Howe used in order to get even with somebody. Yep. And the people would look up on the video screen, and all of a sudden they'd see and they'd realize, wow, it wasn't the defenseman that got the guy; it was actually Gordie. And they would, they go, wow. Ooh. So no, it was a pretty incredible place to play.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm curious. Of course, you got to play with your hero. What was the decision that kind of moved you into Winnipeg to play with Bobby?
Well, what happened? Houston folded, and going into the last year of the World Hockey Association, and the Jets purchased 7 players to come to Winnipeg. So it ended up there was myself, Terry Ruskowski, Rich Preston, Scott Campbell, John Gray, Steve West, and Paul Turbenchi. So the 7 of us. So it was kind of incredible. All of a sudden, we were with a team that we strongly disliked. So it took a little while for the two groups to mesh, like about a half a season.
Well, they were like the Yankees and the Red Sox through the years of the WHA, the Houston Aeros and the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, so throw the Red Sox and the Yankees together and see what happens.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, that the last year of the WHA, you guys were able to win that Avco Cup. Bobby Hull didn't play too much that season, but man, you had 80 games, 65 goals, 34 assists, plus minus 26, 119 minutes. Wow. Talk us through that year.
Well, you know what? Actually, Bobby Hull started the year with us, but and after 4 games, something happened after a game where he and his girlfriend were leaving the arena. Somebody attempted to run them down with a car, and it ended up that Bobby's girlfriend got really scared, and she lived in Hartford, and so she wouldn't stay in Winnipeg. So Bobby called it. Literally, we played this game. Bobby called a meeting the next morning and said, "Guys, this happened last night." He says, "I'm going to take, I think her name was Claudia. I'm going to take her back to Hartford. I'm going to go to relocate, and I'll be back." And then I remember Lars-Erik Schoberg, our captain, asked Bobby, "How long do you think it'll be?" And he said, "Oh, probably a couple of weeks." And for some reason, Bobby didn't come back that year. So it ended up, I benefited from it because Bobby basically played 2 minutes of the power play. And I remember after that 4th game, I gave my girlfriend Eva a call back in Medicine Hat, and I said, "Wow, this is going to be a tough year to score goals." She said, "Why?" I said, "Because Bobby basically plays 1:55 of every power play. I haven't seen the power play yet." And literally the next morning he holds this meeting and he's gone. And now I'm the guy that's staying out there for 1:55. And and playing with guys like Terry Ruskowski, Kent Nielsen, Rich Preston. They set me up for 65 wide open nets.
That's I think you probably got some better ones than empty netters, but no, I mean, looking at, I've kind of loosely researched the WHA. It was such a, there's actually a great book called The Rebel League that
Yes.
I just finished, and because I knew that you and I were going to talk, and was hoping I could find something in there. And there were some characters in that league, and I mean, I know Derek Sanderson in that league, and everything else. But the thing that was amazing in the WHA for you is that you got to start your career, you got to play with your hero, you got to play a bit with Bobby Hull, you got to share a meal with Bobby Hull. But then when you went to Winnipeg, I know that when that switched, they didn't hold on to a lot of the team. So in a year or two, all of a sudden you're playing with guys like Dale Hawerchuk and some of these other guys that are just like great Winnipeg legends of the '80s. And I'm just curious how that adjustment was from from the WHA to the NHL.
Well, coming into the NHL, what was the WHA teams all got to protect two players, and anyone else, two players and two goalies, and so anyone else went back to their originally NHL drafted teams if they wanted them. So we lost Ruskowski to Chicago, Rich Preston Chicago, Paul McKinnon to Washington, Kim Claxton to Pittsburgh, Barry Long to Detroit, Glenn Hicks to Detroit. I could go on with other players. So we lost a big piece of the core of our team. So really, coming into the first year of the NHL, this was done a little bit different than Las Vegas, which was given a very, very strong team to enter the NHL. We had a championship team that got dismantled somewhat and it had to get rebuilt. And one mistake, one of the biggest mistakes the Winnipeg Jets ever made was they actually had first dibs to get Wayne Gretzky out of Indianapolis, and they actually passed on him. And I mean, what a mistake that was. But yet, after that, we started to get some. Doug Smale came, Thomas Steen came, Dale Hawerchuk, Paul McLean came in a trade. We ended up with a pretty good team, yet we were stuck in a division that had the two best teams in hockey at that time, and they were the Edmonton Oilers and Calgary Flames. And it was they were very, very, very tough to beat.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, you were kind of I would say the heart of your career when I look through your stats is definitely based in Winnipeg, and what as far as living and staying in Winnipeg and trying to build a team that was a competitor amongst playing against guys like Gretzky and and Larry McDonald and all these guys with Calgary. It must have been something. But as far as the Winnipeg Jets back then, how was on being on a line with Dale Hawerchuk?
Well, I was on a line with him in his rookie year. There was him, Paul McLean, and myself, and we really had a very good year, all of us together. And then the next year we got Brian Mullen from Hell's Kitchen in New York, and the coaching staff decided to put Brian on that line with him, and I ended up playing on a line with Thomas Steen at center and Willie Lindstrom on right wing. So we had two pretty good lines. And I mean, both of those two, Hawerchuk and Steen, were two of the best centermen in the NHL at that time. And Thomas Steen, I loved him because he just refused to shoot. All he wanted to do was pass, and all I wanted to do was shoot. So it was really fun playing with Thomas. He was just such a good guy also. And
Yes.
Willie Lindstrom, just a tremendous skater. He actually scored 5 goals in Philadelphia.
Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/THPN. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. And of course, get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in New Hampshire, Oregon, and Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. NFL Plus Premium offer available only to new and former NFL Plus subscribers. Additional NFL Plus Premium terms at nfl.com/terms.
Yeah, and it's interesting, kind of jumping forward a bit here. You were a witness to two young, great players in Hawerchuk and Robitaille, and I know you just played with Robitaille, but both won the Calder Trophy when you were their teammate, and both, you know, I'm just it's funny that you got to really have a witness to these these young talents
Well,
at the time you
Robitaille.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, Robitaille had one of the best, quickest shots I've ever seen. And also, he was drafted, I believe, 9th round. And ended up, and I asked how come, and it was told that he was not a very good skater. Well, I'm here to say that anytime there were a loose puck, if Robitaille had the opportunity to get to it and get a shot, he got there. So he was a different kind of skater, but he could still get there. And then, my gosh, what a nose around the net. I believe in his first 8 years with the LA Kings, the least number of goals he ever scored was 44. and for doing that, they traded him. Like, I'm just puzzled by why they would have ever traded him. The guy, all he was a scoring machine. And then he came back to LA and scored again, and then got traded again, and then he finally came back a third time. And they really did a good job. And he's, I believe, the president of the LA Kings.
Yeah,
And doing
I
a
was
really good job there.
I was lucky to get to watch him in 2002 with the Red Wings, and he still had a nose for the net. He might not have been the 50 goal scorer he was with the Kings, but he was fun to watch. And like
He
you
won a
said,
Stanley Cup there, right?
yep.
Yeah.
And
Good for him.
he was not afraid of corners. And a lot of people in Detroit were really worried about that one when Luc Robitaille comes, because the Red Wings in 2002 had the All-Star team. But no, it's good to hear that. I like you mentioned that people thought that he wasn't the greatest skater, but not everyone can be Connor McDavid. You gotta dig after pucks sometimes.
Yeah, but Luc was one of the best guys. And somehow, I don't know whether it was because he had this really cool laugh and he was always joking around, but it seemed like that puck would just come to him and he would bury it. And really did. Of all the guys I've ever seen shoot the puck, I would say the very best in my era was Mike Bossy. My gosh, that guy could get a shot away quick. Second was Robitaille. Third was, who was the star with Colorado?
Oh, Sakic.
Joe Sakic. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
First time I saw Joe Sakic shoot a puck, like, I had a quick wrist shot and I thought, holy jeez, I think he shoots it quicker than I do. And like, what an incredible shot. So those were the three guys that I think had the best shots at the time. And actually, Lanny McDonald is right in there too.
Yeah, and Joe Sakic.
Nowadays, Ovechkin.
Yeah, and Matthews. Those guys they just know
Matthews,
how to find things.
Incredible.
It's funny you say Sakic, because I was just kind of starting to play, and Sakic used to always shoot. He used to always switch his feet when he would shoot, and at the time that was like, even my coaches were like, no one does that. Just because Joe Sakic can do it doesn't mean you can do it. And so I would get reprimanded from my coach if I switched my feet, but it would work. You get a goal from time to time that way. Right. So those guys were so great. One thing I wanna ask you about, Luc, is your time after this trade with Jim Nill to Boston, Boston was kind of a not it was 2 years. I don't know. Now not a lot of games. Like, just did Boston just not work out?
Well, here's a quick story.
Okay.
It ended up that when I got to Boston, things were working pretty good, and I was playing good. But then we were playing a game against the Islanders in New York, on Long Island, and the puck went into the corner to the left of our goalie. And I was a left winger, and I wish I hadn't done this, but I went back into that corner for some reason to get the puck. And I took a look behind me as I was going in, and I didn't see anybody. So I got the puck and I turned to the right to bring the puck up the boards, and who shows up but Pat Flatley. Somehow I did not see him, and he creams me. And it felt like I broke my right leg. But what happened was I had a high ankle sprain, but it felt like my ankle was sitting on the top of my knee, like on the back of my knee. And that high ankle sprain, so I damaged ligaments. And my game was skating. So the whole rest of that season, I struggled with skating. We would tape it in a cast when I would go into a game. And I did not play good hockey after that. My main strength of skating was gone. And so what happened was, during the summer, though, I trained really, really hard. But that injury happened in late February. And it was not until about mid-August that ankle was finally better. But I trained really hard that entire summer, and I kept track of all my workouts in a book. Plus, I worked out on a machine, a Stairmaster, that would actually generate a piece of paper that said what my workout was. So I kept all that. So when the next season started, Butch Goring was our head coach, and Mike Milbury was our assistant coach. So we had our initial meeting after about 3 or 4 days of training camp. And so I sat down, and Butch went to say something. And I said, Butch, before you say anything, I know Harry hates me. And like Harry and I, Cindy and I, had a bit of an interaction one time where I suggested to him that instead of me sitting out, it would be good for me to play. And he said, what, you're telling me how to coach the team? And I knew right there that was a huge mistake. And so I was in Harry's bad books. So even though I think incredible, like Harry he led Team Canada to the Summit Series 72 win. So he's an incredible hockey mind, hockey person. But we had this thing that happened. So I said, Butch, I know that Harry's already ripped me out of the books. And I said, just, take a look at how hard I've worked during the summer. I had that high ankle sprain. It's healed. I said, just give me a chance through training camp. Let me show you that I can be one of the best players, and that I can be one of your key guys. And he said, and he sat there, and Mike said, hey, can I see that book? And so I gave that over to Mike Milbury, and he was leafing through it. And Butch sat there for about 30 seconds, and he finally said, you're right, Harry hates you. And I said, yeah, I know that. And he says, well, then he says, you better have a good training camp because he doesn't want you around. And I said, okay, thanks for the chance. It ended up I had a tremendous training camp, and then we had a meeting about 2 weeks later, and it was a very good meeting because we sat down, and Butch said, you know what? You've earned it. And he said, we're going to put you on the line with Kenny Linsman and Rick Middleton, and go get him. He said, but you better keep scoring, because I'd scored a lot in training camp. So then what happens is I go into the stick rack, and I haven't got any sticks. Like I had 4 left over from the season before, which I used in training camp. So I went in, and I said to the trainers, I said, where's my hockey sticks? And they came, and they said, you know what? We didn't order you any. Harry told us not to order you any. I said, you got to be kidding. Like, I haven't got any hockey sticks? And they said, no. And they said, it actually Sherwood kind of shuts down their factories now. So we've just reached out to him. Like Butch just told us that you're going to be in the starting lineup. So we've just reached out to order you sticks. So then I attempted to use Ray Bork's stick. I attempted to use Matt's Taline stick. but they were not my stick. I used a lie 7 Mark Howe model. Like, so it's a really high lie that has the blade in next to the feet, so there could be a quick shot. It ended up that I couldn't figure out my shooting, and I lost my confidence. So Charlie Simmer had 17 goals. I had 2. And I had 15 goal posts. And I got put on waivers and got claimed by LA. So it was, so there's crazy stuff that happens in hockey. And I know that's a bit of a victim story. And I've attempted to get by any kind of anger or whatever I have around it or resentment. Yet it's just strange, some of the stuff that happens. So that's why a couple of the reasons my numbers were not good in Boston.
Well, and I mean, on top of it, if a coach and people in the front office, if there's just one person you rub the wrong way, it seems like, and I mean, I don't know how it is now because these players make so much more than you guys ever did, and sometimes it almost seems like the players are the coach at times, but man, you were just it sounds like Luke that you're like, hey, I want to play, I'm ready to play. And
well, yeah,
he
but
took it
that
the
was a
wrong
training
way.
camp where I went out and proved that I could be in the lineup, and my skating was better, and I skated fantastic, and I was in such incredible shape right from day one. Yeah, I got to admit, like, I made a mistake. I one time went and I confronted Harry Sinden, and that was a mistake. It would have been better for me to have just gone back out and practiced. Instead, I came off the ice after a pregame skate, and I went in and said, you know what, Harry, I think it's a mistake that I'm not in tonight's lineup. And I remember he looked at me and said, what, no, you're telling me how to coach? And I just knew that it was a mistake. So, anyways.
Well, let's talk a little bit about LA before we get into, where you got into this max shooting and everything, because I'm very curious about all this time in the NHL and the WHA, where that turned into kind of this training principle that you kind of are starting to put in place and that you still have now. 2 years in LA, a season in Italy. How were those kind of like golden years? Those few years kind of finishing things out in your career.
Well, LA was it was a lot of fun to play on the West Coast. The East Coast and the West Coast are really different. Like in Boston, at 4:00 in the afternoon in traffic, everybody has their arm attached to the horn. I mean, there's so much honking that goes on. In LA, at 4:00 in the afternoon, you're on the freeway. If anybody honks the horn, like, oh my gosh, you better have a good reason because you've broken somebody's zen. And so it's completely different. And so in LA, I mean, it was pretty incredible. Got to play with Marcel Dion, Dave Taylor, and was on a line with them for a little while. Then when Jimmy Carson came, I played on a line with him and Sean McKenna, and Tiger Williams was there. It was an incredible experience to play with Tiger Williams. I think of all the players I ever played with, he wanted to win more than any other player. He was quite an incredible guy and would really do just about anything to win. I've got a ton of Tiger Williams stories.
Well, and I hear he calls you lucky.
No, he would have called Lucky the other Luc, Lucky Luc Robitaille.
Yeah.
No, with me it was Luc. But I just saw him a little while ago, and he was a fantastic guy. And like I said, I've got lots of really good Tiger stories. But in LA, the thing is, we had a good team. We had a tremendous coach with Pat Quinn, and but we just were stuck in a tough division there with Edmonton and Calgary, and so it ended up that we were not able to get out of that division. But the one year we played, when we played out of the division, we won just about every series against the other teams. But we'd come back in our own division and struggled in winning there. But you know what was a sad thing and a bit of a victim story here is that halfway through that season, our last season, the 86-87 season, Pat Quinn was our head coach. And the last goal I ever scored in the NHL was an overtime winner against the Boston Bruins. It was the last game before the end of the new year. in '86. So after the game, we actually went to Johnny Weissmuller's home. He was the original Tarzan, and had a party there. And it was kind of cool. Johnny Weissmuller had like a 25 meter swimming pool, one lane in his backyard. Like, was just 3 feet wide, 4 feet wide, but 25 meters long. And it was kind of cool. So we had this incredible celebration so I scored this overtime winner. Jimmy got the assist on it. At that point, Jimmy and I were the top plus-minus players on the team. Meanwhile, Marcel and Robitaille were the worst plus-minus on the team. Neither one liked back-checking. And it ended up that we wake up in the morning and Pat Quinn's no longer our coach. He's taken on the head coaching general manager's job in Vancouver. And so then the next game, Mike Murphy takes over as coach. I go for the warm-up, come off the ice. As I'm coming off the ice, and it ends up that Mike pulls me aside. And I said, what's going on? He says, you know what, I've decided you're not playing tonight. I want to put some toughness in the lineup, and so we're going to put Joe Patterson in. And I said, what are you talking about? I just scored the overtime winning goal. Like, what? I think I'm a top plus-minus player on the team. Like, this is your first move as you get into the NHL? Is
Wow.
to bench the guy that just scored the overtime winner? Like, what's the message you're trying to send to the team? And literally, I said to Mike, Mike, maybe go and think this over for 5 minutes, and because this just it doesn't make any sense to me. And he went, no. I made this decision. Well, I told him, well, this is just a really, really effing lousy decision. And so it ended up that kind of from that, I never scored another goal. It ended up, I lost my confidence quickly. Like, I sat out 4 of the next 5 games. And confidence is such a thing for players. And after that, I got unlucky and I got nervous. And I made a huge mistake. I had a sports psychologist by the name of Dr. Saul Miller who had helped me to get my confidence back because I'd lost it in Boston. And then I was back playing really good hockey. And for some reason, after Pat Quinn left, I let Saul go. It was one of the worst decisions I ever made. And Saul and I are still good friends. We just chatted today. But why I would have ever not kept him through that time was just like I made some not very good decisions along the way, and that was one of them.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of times where, you know, trying to adjust things. I mean, that's the thing that happens with us hockey players is that when things just aren't right, we try to shake things up a little bit, and sometimes we kind of overshake things up a little bit.
Well, you know what, Steve? One of the things I coach is how important context is. Context is what is called the warrior's cry. It's like when we're jumping on the ice. What is it that we're thinking? What is it that we're saying? So when I was scoring lots of goals and I had my confidence, the context when I was jumping on the ice, I was often heard to say, let's get one. I had a hunter's context. It was an offensive context. Let's get one. We were hunting. And it's the reason they made me the Winnipeg Jets, because when I jumped over the boards, captain of the Winnipeg Jets was that I said, let's get one. And then near the end of my career where I'd lost my confidence, I was jumping on the ice and I was thinking to myself, don't get scored on. So now it's a defensive context. And what was happening? I was getting scored on. So context is so important because context will drive everything.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if it's real hard to shake somebody, you know, the wrong way as a coach, and that's the thing. It's that, you know, let's just have a plan. Let's have a plan of attack. Let's make sure you know what you're up against, and let's know what your game is. The thing that I find so tough now, and I mean, you can give me your idea on this as well, is that kids get really in their heads nowadays, and I think everyone's done that before, but I think a lot of young hockey players get really in their heads a little too much. They try to think ahead a little too much instead of just kind of like focus on the step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and what gets you, you know, off the ice in 45 seconds to a minute, you know, and having a strong shift. And then I'm glad you mentioned context, because I mention a lot with my players, not only context, but just consistency. I want shifts to be, I don't want you to have a great shift and then the rest of the game you stink. I want you to have, even if you're medium, I'd rather you have a medium shift. Every single shift be medium, just so it's consistent. So then I kind of know how to, kind of, develop them and push them a little bit.
Right. Now, one thing I'd like to say about that is that Mike, by the way, Mike was in LA. Mike Murphy was a very good coach. He was our assistant coach at the time, tremendous assistant coach. And when he came up and he did coach, I felt he was a tremendous NHL head coach. He made this one decision that I just wish that I don't know why he did that. Now, when you're talking about players, though, I feel one of the most important things for the player is, and with the coach, is like trust is so important between the two. And the communication has to be very, very good. And so the player's got to be very clear on what his role is. And that's really the coach's job, is to get him very, very clear. But also, the coach's job is to help transmit belief into that player to build his confidence. And and often the coach has to know what that player's talents are, because the most success a player can have is when he plays up to his talents. And then, but also to help that player identify where he is weak, so that he can address those weaknesses. But so for me, my strength was speed, and yet near the end of my career, I was getting the puck as I was coming through the neutral zone. Instead of beating that defenseman one-on-one or challenging him, I was taking and dumping it in, because I was scared to make a mistake. So I had got into an improper mindset, and then instead of let's get one, it was don't get scored on. So mindset is so important, but it's a big piece, not only of the player, but it's even a bigger piece for the coach to be able to build that belief, transmit belief into that player, especially in what he's most talented in. If he's most talented in just getting to the front of the net, screening the goalie, scoring garbage goals, then make that player believe he's the very best at it.
Yeah. No, and I mean, it's the term develop, player development, always makes me think, because there's so many nuances to it that are important, but also, like you say, I had players I played with that were terrible at certain things, but were really good at one thing. And if you have the right coach that's putting you in your right places, not only to build your confidence on that one thing you're good at, but then then you're willing to try to be better at these other things as well, which is so important to actual development.
You know what's kind of interesting? The Washington Capitals, just with what you said, won a Stanley Cup maybe about, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. One of the main reasons that they won was Barry Trotz somehow convinced Ovechkin that he had to be more than just an offensive player, that he had to be an all-round player. And in that playoff, even though Ovechkin got the Conn Smythe trophy, even though the guy that really deserved it was the goalie Holtby, because without Holtby, they were done. They lost the first 2 games in that against Columbus, and then Holtby went in Game 3, and then basically backstopped them to to beating Las Vegas. But somehow Ovechkin bought into that he had to play both ways, and he was blocking shots, and he was playing defensive, and he made a shift in his game, and it was one of the key things in the Capitals winning the Stanley Cup that year.
Yeah, and and
yet he still scored a ton of goals.
Oh yeah.
But he was such an all-round player that season.
That's Luke, that's what I've been talking to people about these last couple of days with Connor McDavid. Everyone's like, we know Connor McDavid is a special player. something that a lot of us haven't seen in certain ways he plays, especially his skating. Such a unique skater. But the thing that I loved about him, there was kind of things that they posted online when they were when he was doing the handshake line, and his eyes looked like he's ready. And I keep telling people, well, because I know that Edmonton didn't have the best D, they didn't have the best goaltending, but I'm like, the key is Connor McDavid's ready, and all you had to do was look at his eyes in that handshake line, and that's a kind of that kind of that extra level of warrior attitude that even the best player, the current best player in the world can elevate. And that's what Ovechkin did in that playoff season. He just elevated in the playoffs more than we've ever seen. And it's really amazing to see a player that you don't think that can elevate anymore. And here we got to see him elevate and add that extra component to his game. And definitely was a huge part of why they won.
Yeah, you know what? Also, it's amazing how often a team has to go through a loss like that in order to. I think, like one of my mentors has taught me something that's called alpha leadership, and a piece of it is how in a player there's a loves to win and a hates to lose, and it's almost like a team has to lose. Like Florida lost last year. They almost have to have that. They have to feel the loss and learn to hate it so much that then the hate to lose and the love to win actually takes them and enables them to win the next year. If we go back, the Islanders, they couldn't beat Montreal. They finally did. They won 4 in a row. Oilers could not beat the Islanders, and then finally, but they paid the price of losing, and then they finally won. They hate it. They just hate the feeling of losing, that they will get to the next level. And then, yeah. So I've just seen it so many times where a team, like I would, if I were going to bet for who's going to win the Stanley Cup next year, I'd put my money on Edmonton.
I'm totally with you. I still think Dallas is going to be a challenger, but
Oh, sure.
if Edmonton can get an upgrade, I love Stuart Skinner, but I think if Edmonton can get an upgrade in net and maybe get one other defensive component, I have no. When you got 3 guys like Drysdale, Hyman, and McDavid, there's no limit of what those guys can do, and they already showed it this year, considering they started the season like 3-19 or something like that. So
Well, yeah, it was strange they had such a terrible start. It was kind of almost unbelievable. But then it just came out in that I'd heard that Draisaitl had broken a rib in one of the last games against Vancouver. So, and maybe a finger. And it was interesting how his shooting and his skating both really deteriorated in this final series. And he was one. He was one of the key reasons the Oilers did not win.
yeah,
Was because they missed his goal scoring.
yeah, for sure. And he's and such a wicked shot right off of the goal line.
It's such a wicked setup by McDavid.
Oh yeah,
How McDavid can suck everybody in, throw it over there.
yeah. No, I mean, right now, let's kind of move to the way that you kind of teach shooting. And since you've had such a great career with it, and you've got to see so many great players firsthand, on your bench even, that are just, I'm curious to know like some of the, the unique things that you noticed in certain players shooting, and even all the fact that I really love what you mentioned, Luke, too, about how even Luc Robitaille could adjust your shooting, a little later in your career. Just little things that he was doing. What are some of the things that from your career has moved into some of your training?
Well, I teach a program called Maximum Scoring. And so it's got different components to it. One piece is a shooting component. One of the things that Robitaille did show me was that for years and years and years in Canada, we were coached to cushion the puck. to cushion the puck. But actually, what he showed me that day out in the rink in 1987 was that that if we actually cushion the puck, we put the puck in a place where we aren't able to see it, and it actually gets behind us. So instead of that, his suggestion was actually, and then if we do catch it back there, now we've got to drag it all the way up to the release point and then shoot. Well, that all takes time. What Robitaille did was, instead of cushioning, he sets his hands out there and catches the puck at the release point, and then fires it from the release point. So it just saves all sorts of time. And so I took a look at this, and when he showed me this, I literally, because I had taught cushion the puck because I had learned that right from in the early 1960s. It was taught at that time. And so then when I saw that, the very first thought that went through my mind is, wow, how many kids have I messed up? Because what he said made such sense. Catch the puck at the release point and shoot it. So you actually extend our hands to the puck, catch the puck out in front, or if it's coming across, extend, just stop it, pivot in behind, and fire it. Now the thing is, there's two things with this. As a player, I had a high lie, so I would just set the stick right in front of me, stop it. The guy with a lower lie actually has to catch it out here a little bit, because he has to get the puck away from his feet because he has a low lie on his stick. So Austin Matthews will often catch the puck out here instead of right in front of him. But when he catches it, he actually catches it at the release point and then fires it. So that was one of the things that I've coached for 20 years, and often, because I asked myself, how did this get into the system? How did cushioning the puck get in? And I'm convinced that what happened was in the 1950s, when this first started getting coached, was that hockey sticks at that time were so fragile. Like if you took one and you went like this, it would snap. And so players at that time would put a whole bunch of Gordie Howe tape on it. And then what happened is, I'm convinced they cushioned the puck just so the sticks wouldn't break. And then what happened is, this somehow got to be taught the way to do it. And it is absolutely ineffective. Even though there's a very small percentage of the time that if the puck is coming, a player will cushion it in order to catch it behind him, to throw it in through his skates and around the defenseman. Like Alexander Steen was tremendous at doing this in St. Louis. So it's a whole different way of actually catching the puck in order to release it quickly. And so that's what Robitaille taught me. Other than that, I teach different kinds of shots. I teach the Crosby shot, the Datsuk shot, the Ovechkin shot. So they're all different kinds of shots. And when a player learns these various types of shots, then it'll take his game to a whole new level. Because one of the keys to goal scoring is, how do we trick the goalie? And these various shots are designed differently. And now, when I started teaching them 20 years ago, they were new. Now just about every player can do them. And a player had better learn how to be able to do them if he wants any hope of getting into the NHL.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, because deception is such a big thing that, some of these newer high-level stick handlers like Trevor Zegras and Connor Bedard, especially Connor Bedard, he's got such a wicked shot and such a wicked release. He almost seems to do a little bit against what you're mentioning, though. Bedard gets the puck kind of away from him and behind him a little bit, but he's always got it on his heel, which is really wild because that's what Matthews does. Matthews always has it on his heel, and then he drives it through, the middle of the stick. It's interesting. I'm interested to know what you think about this young kid, Bedard.
He's a real talent. He helped Canada win the gold medal in the juniors the year he was there. It was just an absolute fluke when he broke his jaw and ruined his year. So, but the man is extremely talented.
Yeah.
Around the net. And you know what? I'll have to take a look at that piece because he maybe puts the puck behind him in order to drag it past the defenseman. But I think that when he's shooting, I'd be convinced that he'd have the puck in front of him. So anyways,
Yeah.
I'm going to have a look at it.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, just because he's such a the puck doesn't seem to come off his stick very easily. Um, but he's such a hard shooter, and he doesn't have to. It's almost like it definitely, like you and I were talking about this before we kind of got on the recording, was you know how kids just don't realize how many times you shoot is important. Just like the Sidney Crosby, you know, I think it was a dryer or something that he was shooting into or something in his basement. And and Connor Bedard, all these kids now just are, you know, it's it the amount of volume and how many times you shoot just makes it so impactful. And the thing is I love about it, and the things that I kind of trained to some of my kids, is that you don't miss the net. Then if you're shooting on the net again and again and again, 100 pucks, even 50 pucks, 200 pucks, like you mentioned, um, man, you don't miss the net. If you try to, you can almost close your eyes and not miss the net.
Well, one of the keys, Steve, it was interesting. You mentioned deception earlier. With today's hockey, with as big as the goaltenders are, often a piece of the shot is to get the goalie to go down, because then the top shelf actually opens up and there's a little bit of room. But the goalie's got to go down early in order to, otherwise, if we get in too close on him, there's nothing to shoot at. But then, so second piece around the deception is with today's goalie, because they are so big and they give away so little net, is that we've got to be able to fake a shot and then move the thing sideways, both ways, in order to actually see open net. And quite often there's quite a bit of open net. Like if a player can actually fake a shot and move sideways, he'll often shoot the puck into a wide open goal. That was something that in this series between Edmonton and Florida, Bobrovsky, who was incredible in the first 3 games, and the Oilers actually really they missed 3 breakaways in game 1. But what happened was after that, they started to come down and they started to fake shots and hold on, and they were actually going around. One of the goals that was scored, I think, in game 4 was a player actually went right around Bobrovsky, brought it back, and tucked it in with his backhand, or he lost it and somebody else shot it in. So Bobrovsky was out near the top of the crease. There was nothing to hit. So they started to actually kind of go around him or fake a shot and move sideways. And so they started to beat him with a number of dekes and deception. So it was, and I've got to give Bobrovsky credit. In that last game, he made some incredible saves, and then he was incredibly lucky.
Oh yeah,
When he was
yeah.
swimming around like a fish outside of the net, some of his defensemen were making the saves, or that puck just didn't come to an Oilers stick because there was a wide open net. There was a couple of times he was so far out of the goal. And so when there's a goaltender that's as good as Bobrovsky and then lucky, that's an incredible combination.
Yeah, I also just talking to that as well, as I think the thing that was really great with Florida is that down the middle, both those all 4 of their centers are really good net to net, and you get both defensemen making sure that on that second, third shot, he's not having to do something crazy.
Yeah.
He can be a little lucky then, and he can kind of take chances, because you get 2 defensemen and a center there that are really a well-oiled trio to really help him. All they have to do is just look for the wingers, and they're out of the zone.
Well, you know what? I felt there was a huge mistake at the end of the playoffs, is that it was a mistake to give the MVP to Connor McDavid. He might have been the most exciting player in the playoffs, yet the MVP was Bobrovsky. The team that really could have won this Stanley Cup this year was the Rangers, but the Rangers could not figure out how to score. The top scorers on the Rangers all got shut down in that series. Bobrovsky beat them along with the rest of the team, but without him in net, like there was a showdown there. The Rangers had Shesterkin, is that right?
Yep.
As the goaltender, and Bobrovsky won that battle. And as good as Shesterkin was, he was not as good as Bobrovsky. And I would have given him the MVP just for the fact that they beat the Rangers. The Rangers had a heck of a hockey team this year.
Yeah, and they're going to be even better next year. I know, Chris Drury will probably do something. The key of the Rangers is just that guys like Panarin and Zibanejad, and you know how it is.
Yeah.
It happens. You can have hot streaks. You can have real cold streaks too. And the two of them really had one, both of them.
Yeah. Actually, the only time the Rangers scored in that series was when they were scoring shorthanded. It was otherwise Bobrovsky shut them down. And the thing is, in Game 7, my thought is, like, if Edmonton wins, well, sure, give it to Connor McDavid. But my gosh, they did not win.
Yeah.
Bobrovsky won Game 7.
Yeah, sure.
He won Florida the Stanley Cup. Like, he deserved to be the MVP.
Yeah.
He beat the Rangers.
And it was a great series, and I mean,
so why the NHL
living in New York,
yeah,
I think there's a lot of, even the some of the calls and things like that. I think Connor McDavid gets a little bit, a little bit of a different treatment sometimes, and I think not only him but his team sometimes. But
the refereeing in this series was really good.
This series, yes. Yeah.
The final series, they did a heck of a job. They really let the teams play. They did their best to stay out of the way. By the way, you know what penalty has to go? It is an absolute mistake. Would you like to know?
Which one?
The 4-minute unintentional high stick. Do you know how often the word blood shows up in the penalty in the penalty book?
Yeah.
In the rule book? How many times does the word blood show up?
Like twice, I think.
0.
Really? Wow. Okay.
And yet they give a 4-minute penalty on an unintentional accidental high stick just because a guy digs into his beard, like your beard, and pulls up some blood, or he bites his tongue. Like, give it a 2-minute unintentional high stick or a 5-minute intentional to injure high stick.
Yeah.
But get rid of this 4-minute penalty. That 4-minute penalty, I've seen it bugger up more games this year.
Oh, yeah.
It's just because some guy accidentally gets his stick up, and all of a sudden, just because there's a little bit of blood, it's a 4-minute penalty.
They're hunting for a little blood. Yeah.
Right. And it's actually dishonored the game when these guys are digging on their face, biting their cheek, trying to generate some blood. It dishonors the game.
Yeah, and
so get rid of that
more than
4-minute
anybody.
penalty.
A lot of half the time it's the half shield cutting a guy's nose.
Right.
Like it happened to McKinnon. I think kind of in the regular season, he took a puck off the face and his half shield twisted and it cut his nose, and it ended up being a 4-minute penalty.
Right.
Because a stick was there as well.
Right. And so you know what? In the end, one of the most important things in hockey is that at the end of the game, the fan goes home knowing that he wasn't cheated. But that 4-minute penalty almost makes it like, and there's one other thing that has to change. That 4-minute penalty almost makes a fan feel like he got cheated. He paid $200 to watch a game and ended up getting cheated in the end. Right now in baseball, they've got to change it. They've got to figure out how to be able to immediately challenge a ball strike. Like that, there are guys being called out on balls that are this far out. Like, it's got to get changed. Otherwise, I might stop watching baseball because it is just a joke. The other rule that's got to be changed right away is that if that puck goes into the corner anytime within the last 2 minutes of the game, or when the goalie's pulled in, some guy puts his skate on that puck, it's got to be an automatic 2-minute penalty immediately for delay of game. It's incredible how in the end of the game, like even in the end of this game with Florida, the last 15 seconds were spent in the corner attempting to get the puck out of that corner, and the Oilers never did. Like, where's the excitement in watching 10 guys in the corner, holding the puck against the board. Why is that not an immediately 2-minute penalty for delay of game? Because it'd be exciting to see the Oilers get that puck out of the corner, maybe get it to the net, maybe get a goal, maybe go into overtime. Like how much excitement maybe got missed because of this, and how it's not called immediately is just incredible.
I'm with you. That's a great thought on rule changes, because I know that, I don't know if you saw, there's a few different rule changes. I forget, they're not very big. I think the one is the red flag, which a lot of coaches don't throw, is, speaking of your extra 2-minute penalty, because of the blood. If someone says that wasn't a stick or something like that, apparently a coach can challenge that now, which is even worse. So it's just wasting time for that, like, extra, because the guy cut his lip a little bit. It's a tough guy sport. I tell it to my kids every day, as far as, I want kids to be good skaters. I want them to have fun. I want them to have everything. But listen, you're covered in armor. You signed up for a tough guy sport. You got to have a little bit. You got to have a little, a little skin on your back a bit. But
something the NHL has done really good is the NHL has done its best to take out this hit to the head that causes concussions. Like, I had a lot of concussions, and I've paid a price for it over the years. Through depression and also distraction, the inability to concentrate. So they've done, even though it has taken much of the hitting out of the game, it has made the game safer for a player in the long run. And that is really, really, it's important. The NHL has done a really good job on that. But there are a couple of rules that would just make the game better.
Mm-hmm.
And because, like, when that puck sits in the corner the last 15, 20 seconds of the game, and, like, where's the excitement in that?
Yeah, I thought about that when
and
that was
somebody
happening.
might say, well, there's the battle. Well, that's BS.
Yeah, someone's got
excitement
their,
in
someone's got their 11
in hockey.
Someone's got their 11
in hockey is when
11,
the puck is being shot at the net.
Yeah, not when they have their skates stuck against the boards.
Right.
Holding onto the puck, yeah. No, I'm with you on that for sure. Well, Luc, this has been such a great conversation, not only about your
You're
career,
welcome.
some great stories. You got to play with some great players. They got to play with a great player as well. So definitely so happy we got to talk. We're happy we got to get our coaching chat together on things and stuff. And I'd really love to see you in New York City sometime in the near future.
I would love it, Stephen. You want good job in what you're doing there with your podcast and with your minor hockey players that you've been working with. How many years you've been in this?
About 20 now.
Wow, 20 years. Good job, man. You must have an incredible love of the game.
Yeah,
And
I really do.
You know, by the way, I was truly blessed. Like, I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Saskatchewan. We didn't even have an indoor hockey rink. I've got a talk. It's called Dreams Can Come True. Miracles Can Happen. Like, somehow I had a dream that when I was sitting on my dad's lap when I was 5 years old, and we were watching Hockey Night in Canada, he was talking about all Gordie Howe, Bobby Hull, Maurice Richard, Dave Keon. And there was a thought that came in that, wow, if I could be one of those guys on the TV, it would make my dad proud of me. And that thought went from there to my heart. And then I'm convinced, out of the love of my dad and the love of hockey, and the miracles that happened after that. Like, I would say my prayers at night, and it would be, my prayer was, dear Lord, please someday can I play with Gordie Howe, and while you're at it, will you throw in Bobby Hull? And both came true. So dreams can come true and miracles can happen. And you know what? I was truly blessed to play with legends. Not greats, but they were legends.
Yeah. Now, Luc, we went through your fondest hockey memory. It seems like that one goes with it as well there. I like that. It's a very poetic end to our conversation. And Luc, thank you so much. And nothing but the best to you for sure.
Okay, appreciate it. This was good today. I enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Luke is a true classic. So happy I got to have a conversation with Mr. Lukowich. So many great stories for such a storied career of over 800 games between the WHA and the NHL. Played his career, entered his career on the shorter side of the NHL, and still played with tons of grit, tons of determination. Ugh. Sorry, my tongue rolled on me. And he really exemplifies a great player that made the players around him good, just as good as those great players around him made him better. So, it was so great to have a conversation with him. So yeah, that's the end of episode 34. Don't forget to subscribe below. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to let me know if you have any suggestions. We're in this together, in this hockeyverse. And there's some really, really amazing people I have lined up for some future interviews. So on that note, don't forget, keep your stick on the ice, kids. Make sure your stick is facing where you want the puck to be, and wait for that cross ice pass so you can drive it into the net. And that's pretty much it. Enjoy yourselves. Start watching preseason hockey. We've got it. And we've got KHL, we've got preseason hockey, we've got college hockey coming up. Hockey is coming. Hockey is back. It just needs to cool down a little bit. So much love, and we'll talk to you soon.
His voice boos from the bench, calling plays an expert cinch. Pucks on net, let 'em rip. We'll bring the chip to our grip. Resurfacing the ice every game. The Zamboni makes it smooth and precise. This pass needs no bumps, so the biscuit doesn't jump. Cross ice pass, a pop in motion, slicing through.